GameSci.com. GameSci.com.
Heidi ho, neighbors! I am Professor Chris Ferguson. Welcome to the lesson on Python JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. JSON, or JavaScript Object Notation, is a lightweight data interchange format. It is easy for humans to read or write. It is easy for machines to parse and generate. JSON is a text format that is completely language independent, despite its name, but uses conventions that are familiar to programmers of C, C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python, and many others. These properties make JSON an ideal data interchange language. That's according to JSON.org. JSON makes it easy to exchange objects. That's according to me. What we're really doing with JSON is we're sending an object on one computer over to another computer and rebuilding that object. JSON is really about exchanging objects. Its original purpose, so JavaScript could send an object to a server program like Python. It was so successful, most languages now use it to exchange objects or data. Computer number one has an object. It has an object in its computer memory. It converts it to a JSON format string right here and sends it to computer number two, which uses the string to recreate the same object. Now the object/data is on computer two. Technically, it's the strings going back and forth, but practically it's the objects being exchanged. On the server computer, it receives the JSON format string text from the client. It immediately runs its functions to make it an object. The server processes that object to send a reply to the client. If the reply is an object, it runs a function to convert the object to a JSON format string. That string is sent back to the client, which will recreate the object. Technically, it's strings/text that are going back and forth, but practically it's objects being exchanged. Sometimes servers reply with HTML, not an object. In the case of web programming, an object is sent as a string over to the server. The server processes the request, builds a reply, and sends it back as another JSON object. Object equals curly brace command weather, comma city Dallas, end of curly brace. This is a standard Python dictionary object. Luckily, a JSON object is almost exactly the same as a standard Python dictionary object. The double quotes are required around the keys command and city, the string values weather and Dallas. If you want to change the object, it's trivial. You'll say object command equals time, or object subscript city equals New York. This is going to be our server request. This is the command we want to send across the internet to a server. So the client program builds a Python dictionary object, and what's it do with it? It's going to convert it to a string. We're going to say JSON string equals JSON.dumpS or dump string, and we're going to pass it that object we created above. We have this Python dictionary on the client computer, and we're going to convert it to a JSON format string. You cannot send an object as is over the internet. JSON.dumpS will copy every property and its value and build a plain text string that you can send over the internet. While this is a copy of the data in the object, it looks like an object, but it's just a plain text string. All I did here was take a Python dictionary object and convert it to a JSON format string using the dumpS method. This is not a web programming class, it's a Python class. So I'm just going to tell you that I am sending this string over the internet to the server program. And you can see that this string right here that was on computer number one is now on computer number two, exactly as it is on computer one. The plain text string is sent over the internet and the server program converts it to its own object format. Wow! Now the server can easily process the request using the object. The dictionary object on the client side was transferred using a string, then reborn as a server-side object. Now, if the client and the server are both Python in this case, but that is not a requirement. Remember, JSON is language independent. This could be a JavaScript program sending an object over to a Python program. This could be a PHP program sending an object over to a Python program. It's program language independent. In my example, since this is a Python course, both programs are going to be Python, but that is not a requirement. And what happened here was we had an object on this computer. We converted it to a string. We sent it over to the internet to computer number 2. It took that string and converted it back to an object. So really what's going back and forth between the two computers is strings, but the destination is an object. Now the server program is going to process the command. The command was, I want the weather for the city of Dallas, and the server program is going to process that. And while it's processing it, it's determined that the temperature in Dallas is 87 degrees and the conditions are cloudy. So it's going to add that to its local object in its computer memory. It's going to add the reply to the dictionary. And at some point, what's it going to do with that object? The server program uses the dictionary to process the request and builds a new object with the reply. More data has been added to the dictionary. Then what the server does is it converts the object back to a plain text string, a JSON format plain text string, which can be sent over the internet. Objects are not sent directly over the internet. Everything's converted to a string and then sent as a string. So this new string is the JSON format string that it's going to send back to the client as a reply. JSON string equals server.response. I'm going to receive a reply back from the server, and it's going to be that string we were talking about, that JSON format string. And you can see the JSON format string with the updated information has now arrived back at the client. Bang! The Python program on the client side reads the plain text string that the server sent in reply. As of now, this is just a string. It's not an object, but it contains the data we requested. The response method is pseudocode. It reads the reply and returns a string. The next step is the critical part. Object equals new JSON.loads, that JSON string that we just received. And you can see we now have a new object on the client side, which contains the information we requested. What's the temperature in Dallas? What are the conditions in Dallas? Boom! The plain text string is converted to a full Python dictionary. The object, or OBJ, can now be used like any dictionary. It contains the new data. Temp is 87 and the current conditions are cloudy. Did you see how we transferred an object on the server back to the client Python and made it a dictionary? It's strings going back and forth between the two computers, but they are converted to and from objects very, very easily. Dump S converts an object to a string. Load S converts a string back to an object, OBJ in this case. Print weather for, in this case, Dallas. Temperature is 87, conditions are cloudy. At this point, OBJ is a dictionary, or a dictionary object. It's used to output on the screen weather for Dallas, temperature 87, conditions cloudy. What happened here is we started with a dictionary object, converted it to a string, a JSON format string. We sent that string over the internet. Boom. When it was received on the server, it took the string and made a dictionary object. And then it repeated the same thing going back the other direction. The two key commands here are JSON.dumpS, which takes a dictionary object in Python and converts it to a JSON format string, and JSON.loads, which takes a JSON format string and converts it back to a dictionary object. Are you getting the idea what JSON is? JSON is the string format that is being sent back and forth between two separate computer programs. It is a simple pattern. Build a dictionary object in Python. When you want to send it to the server, convert the object to a string with JSON.dumps and send that string. When the reply returns, it's a plain text string. Convert that plain text JSON format string back to a dictionary object with JSON.loads and use that object to update the screen or update anything you want. Just to wrap up this slide, JSON started with JavaScript. Obviously, it's in the name. It was designed so JavaScript could send objects/strings over the internet to server programs. Server programs could process it and send a reply back. And if you wanted an object back, you could get an object back. JSON has expanded well beyond JavaScript. Everybody liked this idea so much well that all the languages started supporting it. Python, Java, PHP, and it's very easy to send JSON format strings/objects between two separate programming languages now, or between the same language. A Python program on one computer could send a JSON format string to a Python program on another computer. It's object exchange. That's the purpose of JSON. This lesson is all about data exchange, sending data from one computer to another. Next up is CGI programming. CGI, or Common Gateway Interface, allows a client to run a program on and send information to a server. This is similar to JSON, but it's very different. We are actually going to run a program on the server, not just exchange data. The gateway then allows the output from the program to flow back over the internet to the browser for display. The gateway is very much a two-lane highway. The common in CGI means it's language or platform independent. That's a big theme in this lesson. It's not just about sending two things between Python programs. It's exchanging data between two very different programs on two very different computers. CGI stands for Common Gateway Interface. How do I send data through the gateway to another computer? Form action equals form.cgi. This is a standard HTML form with two input boxes and a submit button. You've seen this on dozens and dozens of web pages. It will display as shown on the browser window. Here's the display showing the form. The data in these boxes is what CGI will transfer to the server program. When we press this button right here, not only will it jump across the internet and run this form.cgi program, but it will send this data with the request to run the program. So let's fill out the form, hit the button, and see what happens. Here's our form on a web page. What happens when we press this Submit Query button? Pressing the button will run the server program form.cgi. See this form.cgi program? This is a program that's sitting on the server. I am requesting when I press this button to run this program over on the server. Now, if I had room, I would have put http://www. I would have put the full address here. But I didn't have the room for the full address. So what we're doing here is we are running form.cgi over on the server. Now note how the data in the form is tacked onto the program when it's submitted. The question mark and what follows is the common format. It is done this way for Mac, Windows, Android, PHP, Python, Perl, etc. The idea is when we're going to send the data in the form to the server program, we are going to add it to the request to run the program. So the button has been pressed, the data has been added to the request, and the request has jumped across the internet, and we are now running form.cgi. This is the form.cgi program on the server. First thing it has to do is import the Python CGI module. Under the covers, Python takes this common format data, the data tacked onto the program name. You can see it right here after the name of the program. It takes this data and does what with it? It loads it into a dictionary so we can use it. This is how all form data is sent to any CGI program, Python, PHP, Perl, etc., using the get method. When you use the get method in your form, it says tack the data onto the end of the program run request and send it across the internet. Remember, there's a lot of browsers that could be running on the client side. This could be Firefox, this could be Chrome, this could be Edge. And there's a lot of programming languages on the server side. This could be Python. This is a Python example, but it could be PHP or Perl or some other programming language. We need this common format so we don't have to reinvent the wheel for every browser and every programming language. So now the program is running on the server side. We're going to print what's called a header. We're going to say, I will reply to your request with text/HTML. We're telling the client that we will return an HTML web page as a reply to their request. This line, this print content type, must be at the top of every CGI program. It tells the browser an HTML web page will be sent back as a reply to the form submit. When you press submit query, it'll send a reply back and it's going to be a web page. CGI programs can send back JSON or XML or images, plain text, and many more different things, but most often CGI programs send back HTML or web pages for the browser to display. CGI is a two-way street. The client sends data to the server. The server, in this case, is going to send an HTML web page back to the client. This is where it's similar to JSON, right? When we did the JSON slide, it was objects going back and forth. In the case of CGI, it's this data and the request to run the program being sent to the server. And now the server is saying, I'll send you in a reply, HTML, a web page to display. Data equals CGI.fieldStorage. We're using this module that we just imported, and we're going to load a dictionary with the data that was sent to the server. The field storage method creates an almost dictionary where the keys are the field names of the form and the input is stored in the value property. If there were 10 fields on this form, then data would contain 10 elements, each with its own object containing the value entered into the form. Basically, the data entered into the form shows up in this data almost dictionary object on this side. So you can see our parameters, which were tacked onto our program names. First will be assigned to the first element in the data dictionary. Last will be assigned to the last element in the data dictionary. And it's very close to being a dictionary, but it's slightly different, and we'll explain that shortly. Let's print the data dictionary first element dot value and the data dictionary last element dot value. Remember, the gateway is a two-way street. On one side, we sent first equals John and last equals Jones. That was sent to the program form.cgi. Every print in this program is going to be sent back to the browser for display. So let's go to the dictionary data, extract the object with the key first or the key last, and print the value in the variable. Now, I've said a couple of times, this is almost a dictionary. Normally, with a regular dictionary, you don't need this dot value in here. But since everything in this particular dictionary is an object, we have to go to its value property and extract it. This print line will produce John Jones, and when it's sent back, it'll show up on the browser as John Jones. Are you getting the two-way street part of this? The request was sent to here, and now we're taking the data that we got and we're sending back HTML to the client. The comment. The question mark says form input will follow. Key equals value, where key is the field name of the form and value is the contents. The ampersand means an additional key equal value follows. Look at the round trip here. Client to the server, back to the client. The browser interprets the HTML. The BR is a new line. B and /B, that's bold the word thanks. What's happening here is this was sent to the server processed it, and is now sending back HTML to the client for display. The person who did the submit is displayed. Notice the BR, that's a break in HTML. It'll start a new line. Then the word thanks is in bold HTML. That's what HTML does. It says make this text bold. And thanks for your submit. I'll be honest, this program's not doing anything spectacular. It's basically sending a name to the server, and the server's echoing the name back to the client. Method equals post. Take a look at this box right here. We're going to make one small change to this example and see the difference. In the HTML, change get to action equals post. While get is faster than post, everyone can see the form input when it's added to the program name. Post is typically used when sending larger amounts of CGI data and when security/privacy is more of an issue. There's two ways to send CGI: post and get. Let's look at how post works now. Here's our standard HTML form again with our slight change of a post, 2 input text boxes and a submit button. It will display as shown on the browser window. You don't see anything different with get and post. The data in this boxes is what CGI will transfer to the server program, this time using the post method. So Sue Kim is entered into the form and the submit query button is pressed. Just like with get, it is a request to run the form.cgi program over on the server. Pressing the submit button will run server program form.cgi. This time the data is sent in a separate data package to the server, not tacked onto the program name. The HTTP server receives 2 requests, one to run the program form CGI and the other with the form input. If you recall the last example, this data was tacked on right here and sent with the request to run the program. Now the data is going to be sent in a separate data package. Still the same data, still almost the same format, but it's sent separately from the request to run the program. You could see Sue is attached to first name and Kim is attached to the last name, and it will be sent to the server program separately. We're now on the server side running the Python program that will process this data. We import CGI. Under the covers, Python takes the common format input sent as a separate packet, the first equals Sue, the last equals Kim, and provides it to the CGI module. The big difference, the data is not shown to the user at the end of the program name. When you tack the data on here, everyone can see it in the request to run the program. This data is now sent separately to the server. You won't see it at the end of the program name. Print content type :text/HTML. This line must be at the top of a CGI program. It tells the browser an HTML web page will be sent back as a reply to the form submit. CGI programs can send back JSON, XML, images, plain text, and more, but most often CGI programs send back HTML. Remember, CGI is a two-way street. The request to run the program and the data is sent to the server, and now the server is saying, I will reply with an HTML web page for you to display. Watch what happens when we get a little farther in here. The web page that had the form on it will be replaced with the reply from the CGI program. Data set using method equals post is automatically loaded into the CGI module. The field storage method creates an almost dictionary where the keys are the field names of the form and the input is stored in a value property. Get and post are pretty much the same at this point. Python really doesn't care whether you used get or post. By the time it loads it into this data dictionary, it'll look the same to the Python program. So what's happening here with this line? Well, the data dictionary object will be created with a first element and its value will be set to Sue. The data element in the dictionary last Its value will be set to Kim. This was the data that was sent as a separate packet to the CGI program, and it just took that data and loaded it into this data dictionary. And notice how this program on the server side is the same program, right? We didn't change anything. When we switch between get and post, the Python program doesn't really have to change at all. Since this is a second request, it will send back a different reply. This time the first name, its value Sue, and last name, its value Kim. This will now be the data sent back. And notice what the client program does with it. It tries to display, or will display. It will display what is sent back from the request to run the CGI program. The gateway is a two-way street. First equals Sue and last equals Kim was sent to the program form.cgi, and every print of the CGI program is sent back to the browser for display. If you go to the data dictionary, extract the object with the key first or last, and print that value. All we're doing is echoing back the name that was sent to us. And when we echo it back by printing it from this program, it'll show up on the browser window over here. Print BR, bold tag, thanks, and a bold tag for your submit. The common. Here's the common. CGI input sent as key equal value pairs, where the key is the field name and the value is the contents. There's a round trip going on here. The client to the server and back to the client. The browser interprets the HTML BR as a new line and the B/B as bold for the word thanks. Form.cgi was requested to be run on this side. The data was loaded in the dictionary and we're echoing it back to the client for display. Method equals post. Let's highlight this one more time. Post is preferred over get for large data and when security/privacy are important. Don't ever send a password field tacked onto the end of the program name. It's very easy to see in the URL. Get is faster, so it's used when speed is more important than security. Every form designer, every web page designer has to decide, do I want to send this data using the get format or the post format? For quick and easy things, I use get. For important, large things, I use post. Fake forms. It is possible to use CGI without a form. If you build a web link like ahref equals http www.zzx.com form.cgi and tack that data onto the program link, it will send it as CGI data. This link will behave like a form with a method equal get. Python is a very popular language for web programming, but it's only one of the languages used to process CGI data. I do a lot of PHP programming on this side. Other people use Microsoft products, Microsoft languages to do this. Perl is another popular option. The common in CGI means any programming language can process data sent from any web browser. That wraps up this lesson. Remember, CGI and JSON are very related. They're both about sending data back and forth over the internet. CGI is quite a bit different in that you're actually running a program on the server. In JSON, you're just sending data back and forth. In CGI programming, you are actually sending a request to run a program with the data, and then data is coming back in reply. With JSON, you always send back a JSON format string as your reply. With CGI, it's wide open. You can send back JSON, you can send back HTML, you can send back images if you'd like. That wraps up this video. Have a good day. See you on the next lesson.